Hey guys, welcome to Geekborn, and today we're talking about one of the best seasons of a TV show that I have seen in a long time, the wacky, quirky season 2 of The Umbrella Academy. This adventure into the past is it's something else. If you see, it takes off basically right where we left off at the end of season 1.
Luther! Diego!
And we get to see exactly what happens when they go through, and I know they kind of like hinted that they might come back as the kids, but they actually come
days
back
earlier.
as adults, so
I need to find my family.
they've done in the time that they've been there, all being scattered throughout different points in time between 1960 and 1963. Of course, 5 shows up 10 days before an apocalypse. They bring the apocalypse with them.
Alright, first off, I want to say we brought the end of the world back here with us.
And we get to see Hazel with 5 when he shows up.
If you want to live, come with me.
Hazel, what the hell's going on here?
There's no time to explain.
Hazel older, and unfortunately we don't get to see him a lot. I enjoyed Hazel and Cha-Cha's characters. They say that Cha-Cha died, or we see what she died, but apparently the showrunner said that she might still be alive because we see in a shot at the commission a character carrying Cha-Cha's, or a mask that looks exactly like Cha-Cha's, and we see some masks that look very similar when we see some of the different people, field agents from the commission during the season. So you never know if they reuse masks, same ones or whatever, but it's still there, so we see that. And of course there's the trailer, or the opening scene that was released by Netflix the day before the show came out. We get to see what's going on. The Soviets were at war, and they're about to drop some nukes. Then that's when Hazel takes him back 10 days before, and he has to go through, get his siblings together, and they have to stop World War III and the upcoming apocalypse once again. Of course, some of them are off doing their own thing. So this is light spoiler, review spoilers. We're gonna talk spoilers. So insert spoiler warning message here. Okay. So if you're sticking with me, you've already seen this. Well, we can talk about everything. I enjoy. This is a review and kind of a recap. I enjoyed the season. I thought it was awesome. Like I said at the very beginning, we get to see so much more. We get more dive in to the characters during this whole, thing. In their time period that they're there. We get to see Luther, number 1. We'll just go through the list, I guess, of them as numbers. We get to see Luther first. He ends up working for Jack Ruby, which, of course, this takes place during the 60s, right before the assassination of JFK, based loosely off of the second volume of the Umbrella Academy, Dallas. And it seems like the shows are kind of going that way. Volume 3 is out, and we can see that this is partly going to follow into maybe volume 3, but maybe volume 4. We can get into that here in a bit. We see Luther work for Jack Ruby. He's a fighter, and he's Jack Ruby's muscle. Eventually we get to see how that plays out and everything he's doing. Next we go on to Diego, number 2. And he's in an insane asylum because he's in the past and he's a hero. He's always been told he's a hero, so he thinks that he was sent there so he could prevent the assassination of John F. Kennedy. That's his whole thing. He's out there trying to get Lee Harvey Oswald because he thinks that that's his mission. That's what he's got to do. That's his whole thing. In there, he meets Lila. Eventually, we get to find out her story, and that she was also born on the same day as the other 6/7 of the Umbrella Academy that we have followed from season 1 to season 2. And then eventually that plays in more later, and how the handler ended up with her, handler from the commission, through, and we see number 3, the rumor. She's off with, she's married, and it's in the 1960s, so, like, some topical type stuff, I guess, for the 2020, what's going on. She's working with the civil rights movement, back in the 60s, and, you know, they, interesting to have a character from, like, the modern day going back and working on something like this. But it's good for her character to have a voice when she usually would use her voice as her power, which she doesn't want to use anymore, after everything that happened with her daughter and her husband during season 1, and how it happened with that, and then what happened with Vanya at the end of season 1, and losing her voice. She just, you know, she does use it, you know, a little bit here and there, but, you know, when she does start to use it, that just, she goes off. She can't stop. She's just going and going and going. You see during the one scene, she's got a guy pouring coffee all over his hand, and it gets intense sometimes. But there's a lot of comedy in the season 2. So let's move on to number 4, Klaus. So Klaus is kind of, in my opinion, is always kind of like the more interesting story going on, especially during this season where he's a cult leader. Eventually he goes through, he meets this wealthy lady after he gets kicked out of this diner, you know, claiming that he's royalty, lying through his teeth, trying to get some food or whatever, and he goes through, and eventually he meets this lady, and he uses his powers, not like he does in the comics, to levitate, but he summons ghosts, or Ben, number 6, to hold him up in the air and make him levitate in front of all these people and make them think that he's, you know, psychic and knows what's going to happen, and he's from the future and all this stuff. And he eventually tells everybody that the apocalypse is going to happen in 2019, and they've got so much time to wait, and then eventually he runs into everybody and he finds out the apocalypse is coming again.
All right, first off, I want to say we brought the end of the world back here with us.
Number 5, of course. He doesn't really have a whole lot going on. He figured out what's going on. He has a lot going on during the season. He doesn't have a lot going on, you know, from the past into the season, because he just showed up right before the apocalypse happens. Meets up with Hazel. He gets a footage from Hazel called the Frankel footage, which is supposed to be footage shot from the grassy knoll of the president getting shot. And then during the season, he ends up trying to find a way to help prevent the apocalypse and the future apocalypse and get back to the present. But hard for that to happen when you've got the handler after you, plus the commission trying to go after you on top of that, because the handler, you know, she got shot at the end of the last season, but she wasn't dead. They went to go cremate her, and they heard her talking a little bit, trying to get a little word out, and they're like, oh crap, she's not dead. She was the leader of the commission, like, we gotta figure out something. So eventually she gets better. The board takes over the commission, though. That's when we meet AJ Carmichael, the talking fish,
We'll hunt us down wherever.
that we'll have up here. And it this character, like, it's in the comics, and it's kind of crazy that they're doing all the stuff from the comics, I mean, for the most part, to get this character, and there's even later to mention the handler and AJ whenever. I guess we'll get to that in a second. So when AJ goes through, takes over the commission with the board, but if we go back to what I was saying about Five trying to get his family home, he talks to the handler. They make a deal. If he would kill the whole board, she would let him take a briefcase and take everybody home. They would escape the apocalypse from 1963 and the incoming apocalypse from 2019. None of that ever happens. They get to live happily ever after. Bada boom, bing, done. Well, of course, everybody being everybody that they are, they can't make it on time. So it is what it is. We better skip on to the next character, which is 6, which is Ben, who spends all of his time with Klaus because he's dead, and the only way that we get to see him, of course, we get to eventually see him possess Klaus during the season because he is slowly falling in love with this girl that he can't talk to because he's a ghost, but he just sits there and watches her. Like, it's kind of creepy the more you think about it, but like all the love and stuff in the show is kind of creepy with like Luther and Allison and Diego and the crazy Lila, who's actually like the daughter of the handler, which is like kind of the villain of the first. It is complicated, man. Just complex. It's too much. I don't know why anybody would want to deal with all that stuff. People do crazy things for love, I guess. So that happens. We see a little bit of that. Interactions with Ben and Klaus being on this retreat in his mansion that he got from this lady while he's, using his cult leader status to do kind of as he wishes, whatever. And then we move on to Vanya, who is only been there for a month, and she's living this nice, happy life after she got hit by a car. Hit by a car as in, like, the Back to the Future sense of hit by a car, where you, like, get lightly nudged and maybe hit your head on the concrete. Like, but you're basically fine. You just, like, sleep it off and you're okay. But that happens. She ends up staying with this family and helping take care of this kid. Eventually, this kid, Harlan, ends up running off and drowning. Vanya eventually, at this point in the season, so she has slight amnesia, and then eventually throughout the first few episodes realizes that she's got her power, like figures out the power thing, and then she's actually decent at controlling it, despite the fact that she hasn't had any training, which they play into later, and she's like upset later on because she doesn't know how to use her powers, and they're like, Ben tells her, you were treated like you were a bomb before you were a bomb, because she was so powerful that Reginald didn't want to have to deal with her, for the most part, keeping her all drugged up. So she spends time with them, and so when the kid runs off and he drowns, she uses her powers to splash up the water in this awesome scene. Honestly, like, straight out of like a comic book, essentially. Just splashes up the water. She goes through, grabs the kid, gives him CPR. Now, during this, she transfers her powers somehow to him, which brings him back to life. Now, I don't know if it's her powers necessarily. There is some kind of power transfer going on. It's not exactly explained. It seems like it's coming from Vanya. But I guess we'll have to wait until a later point in time to see exactly what's going on. Maybe they'll explain it more during Season 3 when they go back. So we got all those characters. So we're in 1963. So Reginald is still alive. We find out that he's part of this group called the Magnificent 12, and that he's actually a big spoiler warning, even though we're already talking about it. He's an alien. We don't know exactly how much that plays out. He kills his Magnificent 12 because they're behind the assassination of John F. Kennedy, because he was looking in to all the UFO and alien stuff that they were a part of, because I assume that they either have something to do with the aliens tech, or some of them are also aliens. That just makes it even more ridiculous. We just have to see how that plays out. Get to see the figure who becomes mom, which was Reginald's like girlfriend at the time. I don't know if that changes because at the end of the show we have a timeline change when eventually they do get back to the future, or the present of as the past for us, the present for them of 2019. What a much simpler time. They go through, and before that gets to happen, they go through. The handler takes back over the commission because 5 took out everybody in the board, and we get to see the handler, homage to the comic books, we get to see the handler actually eat AJ instead of 5 eating AJ, which happened in the comic books. But it's still a cool homage to that because she just straight swallows him. So she takes over. She gets all the field agents to show up, and she essentially has her army to fight against the Umbrella Academy, all 6 of them, /7, since Klaus can, summon Ben. We go through, and the fight happens. Vanya goes through and decimates all of them. Bam, 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 bam. Just one big strike, essentially killing out the whole lot of them. And we go through, and eventually, they're just briefcases all over the place. So that's how they get back to the present of their timeline. But by the time they get back to the present, they show back up in the Umbrella Academy, and there's a bit of a situation going on because it's not the Umbrella Academy anymore. It is now called the Sparrow Academy, and the Sparrow Academy is led by Ben, number 6, but he's probably not called Ben or number 6 in this timeline, because why would he be? I mean, there's just no reason. There's a painting of him in the portrait where I believe either Reginald Hargreaves or 5's painting was after 5 disappeared. We see a lot of characters that are part of what are known as the Sparrows in the 3rd volume of the Umbrella Academy, and it has been confirmed that volume 4 is going to be called Sparrow Academy. So we assume that we'll just get more of this in the future and see what's going to happen. It's hard telling. I don't know. I'm excited. It's going to be a while, unfortunately, with all this COVID stuff going on. But, looking on the bright side, forgot to mention earlier, so if you're still here, thank you so much for watching. I have a Twitch now. I've been gaming over there. Played some Power Rangers. I'm working on a Borderlands playthrough. I'll be doing the Borderlands playthrough every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch me over there at Geekborn Gaming on Twitch. I'll be on there at least twice a week. I'll be on there Tuesdays at 8 p.m. for certain, and one night during the week, probably around 11 p.m. or midnight, sometime after work. And we'll just find something fun to play, either on the Switch or, I don't know, we'll take a look. And remember, some of us just born geeky. You have a good one.